You have to send me a text. Come on. All right, back to it on a Free-for-All Friday. Glad to have you here. So much to talk about today. Let's talk about this. The View. Well, first of all, 877-310-9966 is the hotline for a Free-for-All Friday. I'm out of Studio G. I'm live in the nation's capital here in Washington, D.C. Glad to be here, and I will be for the next week. So that's kind of exciting. Now, three big things you need to know this hour. Number one, The View is going to be put on a leash by Disney. Apparently, people are sick and tired of their political views, and they want less of it. Good luck with that. That's who they are. The Supreme Court issues a big win for Donald Trump and the ability to run the executive branch by firing people. And, of course, number three, you've got the big, beautiful bill. The big, beautiful bill, whatever's left of it and whatever it is now, has passed and will be on to the Senate for consideration. So, with all that said, 877-310-9966 is the Patriot Mobile Common Sense Hotline. You can call in anywhere in America, and we've got a list of folks here to get started with this hour. We're going to go to Jackie in Indiana to start things off this big hour of the Steve Gruber Show. Jackie,
Hello.
Welcome to the program. What is on your mind?
I have two questions. I'm hoping you or your viewers or radio people can help me with. I would like to know where in the Constitution does it say that illegal immigrants are entitled to due process? And the second one is if Biden is found to be incompetent for the last 5 years, are his judge appointments invalid? And that's my question.
Well, there's a fair question you've asked there, and this. Let's go with the Biden question, Jackie. Thank you for the question. It's the auto pen. Apparently, there's already a whistleblower coming forward saying Joe Biden didn't authorize any of this. He was asleep. He was away. He was indisposed when the auto pen was being fired by this group of handlers, puppeteers, really. That's what you're going to learn. Joe Biden had little to do with any of this, which would make it unconstitutional as far as I can tell. The auto pen has proven to be legal. It's been tested in the courts a little bit. But what has not been tested in the court is the broad use of an auto pen. 2,500 commutations, right? 2,500 commutations there in the last, on the 17th of January. He didn't sign all those. He couldn't sign all those in a week. The auto pen couldn't. He couldn't read the cases. He couldn't make decisions. He couldn't do any of those things. His team did all that, whoever they are. And I would think that a lot of that stuff's going to get thrown out. As far as judicial appointments, I don't know, Jackie, but I can tell you it's all going to get challenged because as it all comes out, it's all going to get challenged as to whether Joe Biden was running this place at all. Great question from Jackie. Dave, man, Tennessee has been, popular today. This is the fourth call or fifth from Tennessee today, popular in the volunteer state I am. Dave, how are you?
Thank you, Steve. We are awake. We're listening. I was really tickled to hear the treason. I was really tickled to hear the treason question come up. And the big, beautiful bill is not perfect, but it's a really, really great start. My question is, do we have an action plan for these district judges?
The action plan should be this. I mean, obviously, it's going to go to the Supreme Court. The question that was argued is over birthright citizenship. But the bigger question to me is not about birthright citizenship, which clearly was supposed to help recently freed slaves get full accommodation of citizenship, not to allow people to come into this country illegally, have children, and call them American citizens. That was not the point. I think that we're going to find out about district judges through that case, and if not that case, other cases. The other way this can be rectified is by Congress. Look, district courts, federal district courts did not exist in the Constitution. The only court cited in the Constitution is the United States Supreme Court. You did not have circuit courts of appeal. You did not have federal district judges. That's all been created by Congress, which means Congress can correct it, Dave. It's just whether or not they choose to at this point because of Well, you'd have to have some political courage to do the right thing, and you know how that's. I mean, I'm here in D.C. Political courage, hard to find many days. Tom is in Missouri today. Tom, how are you? What's on your mind?
Steve, I really appreciate RAV and your services. I got three options that could, help us with this immigration problem with the judges. One, give them an office down there so they can hear their cases down there in El Salvador since I'm so concerned about these guys. Two, they could check on their welfare down there. And three, it'd be a vacation to get them out of our country.
You mean get these folks out of the country, Tom?
Yeah, just as we have.
How do you feel about that, though? How do you feel about if they're American citizens? I would have a concern about an American citizen being shipped elsewhere to be held in a prison off American soil. That, I think, would be a step too far. But for illegals to be sent, I mean, the new argument is with a group of illegals that were sent to the nation of Sudan in Central Africa. Again, those conversations.
I'm just talking about El Salvador right now.
Fought out in the courts. We'll see how it goes. How do you feel about that, though, Tom?
Well, I mean, it's a mess. These judges are trying to overrule our president, and we elected him to be running this country, and he's doing a fantastic job. If only these judges would get out of the way.
Fair point, Tom. Great cone. Let's go to the West Coast. Zach is in California. Zach, what's on your mind?
Yes, indeed. Peace, Brother Steve.
Nice to see you.
I wanted to address the Social Security situation. Based upon reporting from the network, it's saying that they have to develop a workaround to where they couldn't do no tax on Social Security, but then they were able to give a credit, like a tax credit. I just wanted to clarify that when it first came up.
$4,000 tax credit. If you're 65 or older, you'll get an additional deduction on your taxes. If this bill gets passed and signed, it'll be a $4,000 tax deduction, a tax credit, if you will, to help offset some taxes.
Absolutely.
No tax on Social Security altogether. They couldn't get there, again, because the Republicans in the United States Senate would not have supported it. That would have been the
right.
issue there.
Well,
So
that was a workaround. That's what I'm saying. That's the genius of the MAGA movement. That's the MAGA movement genius. MAGA movement. The MAGA movement genius to be able to work around that. So because of the existing laws, they couldn't just say no tax on it. So what they have to do is to do a workaround and make it to where they give a credit. So then there you go. At the end of the line, the bottom line, the people win. The people on Social Security and things of that nature.
They got a bonus. That's right, Zach. Thank you for the phone call. Greatly appreciate it. You're right. Got a $4,000 deduction on their taxes. Speaking of all of this, while corrupt elites got rich off crypto, hardworking American patriots were left behind, but not anymore. Block Trust IRA is changing that, bringing the crypto opportunity to real Americans just like you folks here today. With crypto fueling President Trump's America First economic miracle, now is your chance to join the movement. Their Animus AI trading platform runs 24/7, crushing old school strategies and helping patriots like you build serious wealth just like the elites. Named the #1 crypto tech platform by Bitcoin Magazine, Block Trust IRA offers up to $200 million in protection, and their clients are seeing returns sometimes over 250%. Whether you're a teacher, trucker, retiree, or a small business owner, this is your time. Get up to $2,500 in bonus crypto when you sign up. Here's what you do. Go to SteveGruberCrypto.com. SteveGruberCrypto.com. You can remember that, right? SteveGruberCrypto.com. Making retirement great again. At least we hope so. We'll take a break and be right back. All right, back to it here on a Free for All Friday. Glad to have you here as we work through another big day. You know, the big beautiful bill, of course, was a big success to get it through. I mean, so far. Let's see here. My next guest is Kirk Lippold. He's one of those highly decorated veterans working on blowing the whistle on a billion-dollar problem in the nonprofit world. Veterans have joined the Advisory Board of Charities for Vets, a watchdog group that recently audited 100 of the largest veterans charities and found that 40% failed basic standards for efficient use of donations. That's not very comforting, is it? Kirk, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Steve. Great to be on this morning.
And you've been a commander. In fact, for history on you, you were leading the USS Cole during that terrorist attack back in 2000. So you've been in some rough places, to say the least.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I was blessed with a great crew on the morning of October 12, 2000, when USS Cole was attacked by al-Qaeda terrorists, detonating an improvised explosive device next to my ship that had gotten inside our security perimeter. Unfortunately, lost 17 sailors that we're going to honor this weekend, 37 wounded, but I was also blessed with a great crew of heroes who saved that ship, who just got back from deployment this past Christmas Eve after operating in the Red Sea and off the coast of Israel.
Right. So let me ask you about this. These charities for vets, this is how you've decided to spend this portion of your career. How important is it? I mean, you're talking about $1 billion raised in 2024, yet many spend as little as 10%, according to what I've read here, less than 10% of their budgets on actual services for veterans. Where's all the money go?
Well, Steve, what we really look at in Charities for Vet, and our website is charitiesforvets.org, is we decided through the RAM Foundation, the Robert Alexander Mercer Foundation, to really create an organization that would we are the gold standard for looking at all these veterans organizations who claim they do things for veterans, and many do, but really take a hard look at how much money is actually getting to the programs and the veterans that they claim to support. And so consequently, we're like a Consumer Reports. In other words, we evaluate these top 100 or so large veterans organizations and really kind of measure up against their IRS forms, their 501c3s, so their tax returns are public. And that way we can determine what are the administrative costs, what are they actually burning through, and how much actually gets to the veterans themselves. Because in this multi-billion-dollar industry, unfortunately, a lot of these organizations are not as efficient and effective as they should be. And that's why we're the gold standard to say, if you want to give your hard-earned money to a veterans organization, these are the ones that are highly recommended and recommended by us, and these are also the ones not recommended.
All right, so you went through 100 of the largest charities. Give me one of the good guys.
Easy one that you see all the time on TV is Tunnel for Towers. Obviously, when they've got around 96% is actually going toward the people who matter, going toward those people who have lost loved ones either through the war on terror or as first responders who have sacrificed so much for our nation. Those are the ones that get to it. And when it comes to veterans, I think people have a special place in their heart, especially this weekend, Memorial Day weekend, because these young men and women choose to raise their right hand. They choose a life of consequence in service to our nation. And when they unfortunately are killed in the line of fire or doing their job in service, we as a nation have an obligation to take care of them, but government can't backfill everything, and you've got a lot of patriotic and good Americans out there who would like to donate to organizations and make it happen. There you go. That's what Charities for Vets does.
Another one that you cite, Commander, is a good one. Building Homes for Heroes spends over 95% of its budget on programs, only 4.5% on overhead. I don't know what it takes to run a nonprofit like this, but it's good to see that some of these are doing 90% or better of their funds to the actual programs and not management and so forth. But some of them, exact opposite of that. I would call that almost fraudulent, wouldn't you?
I would say that it's in some cases it may appear to border on that. But I mean, just because an organization in our listing is not recommended doesn't mean they don't do good work when the money gets where it needs to be. What we look at though is how much are you spending? And some of these organizations literally have hundreds of millions of dollars that they raise every single year. But when you see 20, over 25%, 30% of their budget spent on advertising, on fundraising, on paying for board memberships. Those are the kind of things where, come on, when you're trying to help veterans, you really have to, you have to pay for some of the staff to be there. I get that. And so does everyone else. A director, make sure that the volunteers know what they're doing. But it truly should be more of a volunteer organizations, or you make sure that people understand you're not coming here to earn a ton of money. You're coming here to help veterans.
All right, Kirk, here's my question. Charities for Vets, your watchdog group. How can people find out more about you and check the scorecard?
Absolutely. It's called Charities for Vets, FOR, charitiesforvets.org. You can go online. You can see what we do. You can see what our evaluation criteria is. You can understand who is in our highly recommended and recommended categories, but also who's in the not recommended categories. One thing that we do different with this gold standard is we have a hard set. These are the criteria, period. We're not like others where they say, well, you're really strong in one area, but you're not so good in another. Therefore, we're going to balance it out. We say you either meet our gold standard criteria or not. So we recommend that people go on board, check us out, and make sure that charitiesforvets.org really becomes your go-to resource so that you can look and say, if I choose to give, will my hard-earned money get where I want it to go when it comes to helping those veterans out?
Commander Kirk Klippold, thank you for what you do. Charities for Vets. Check it out, folks. I'll be right back. All right, well, I guess you probably got big plans for Memorial Day. How do you celebrate it? How do you mark the occasion? I think it's really important that you do. I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation here today, except that we have the freedom to do it because people that have laid down their lives for you and I. That's why we're here. That's why we have a chance to have a conversation in all these great places, streaming live on Facebook and YouTube and X and Getter and all these places. We speak English because people that laid down their lives for you and I to be here. We need to honor these folks by continuing to support this great nation of ours. And don't let people denigrate America. Oh, America is this terrible place. No, it's not. America is the beacon of freedom for the world, even today. Even today, when you have people killing other Americans because they're Jewish. How awful. Doesn't make you an American, it makes you a terrorist. Somehow you missed your civics class in 5th grade and in high school. Anyhow, Memorial Day, I'll be at Arlington National Cemetery. which I think that I don't know of a better place to be on Memorial Day than Arlington National Cemetery. Been there a number of times before, but it always sends a chill through me to sit there and read the names on those crosses, and the places they came from: Iowa, New York, Montana, Mississippi. It's a pretty remarkable place to be. If you want to know more about American history, another great place to be is Gruber for Hillsdale.com. Hillsdale College has more than 40 free online courses that will teach you about the American Revolution, Christianity in early America, the Constitution. That's a great one. What about capitalism? Can you describe it? These are all free college-level programs and videos, and the videos are so well done, so incredibly well done. And you can get them all for free. Don't binge watch Netflix, binge watch Hillsdale videos. Gruber for Hillsdale.com. It's free. You can sign up today. I'll be right back. All right, my next guest I saw standing behind the Speaker of the House at a couple of events this week. That's because he represents Michigan's 5th Congressional District, Branch, Cass, Hillsdale, Jackson, Lenawee, Monroe, St. Joe, and parts of other counties as well. Congressman Tim Walberg is with me. Congressman, nice to have you here today.
It is great to be with you today, and it's great to look
to grow our economy, to secure our borders, to give freedom and opportunity to people in their own lives to make some significant choices themselves. And, you know, my part of the one big, beautiful bill, and forgive me, it was up for almost 30 hours during the process, so it's taken a toll. But, you know, to be able to get my portion of the bill, which was the largest put into law, let's put it that way, put into law savings for the American public percentage-wise in history, with our portion of the education spot in the bill, which saved almost $50 billion, and yet made more opportunity for people to go to college and not to have to take or even be allowed to take out the unbelievable loan limits that were unlimited in the past, with especially Biden saying, in the end, you're not going to have to pay it, so take all you want.
Right. A couple of things that I've heard from people. A couple of things I've heard from people, Congressman, I want you to weigh in. And that is Social Security. There was a promise by Donald Trump, as you know, on the campaign trail to no tax on Social Security. That didn't happen. It's not here. And I'm pretty sure I understand why, because I don't think that Senate Republicans were going to be able to support that in some way. But there is a $4,000 tax credit. So it's not what was promised, but it's not nothing either. Tell us about how you arrived at that decision.
Well, we couldn't touch Social Security. I mean, by rule of reconciliation, Medicaid would touch, and that's where the president came and said, very ineloquently and strong, very strong, nobody is going to be allowed to touch Medicaid spending for individuals that are on Medicaid and meet the qualifications for it. No cuts in Medicaid, no cuts in Medicare. But Social Security, when the Democrats were talking about that, it was a pure lie. Let me say it as straight as that. We could not touch it. If we did, the entire action that we took for the entire one big, beautiful bill would go down by the Senate parliamentarian under reconciliation rules and the Byrd rules. So that was smokescreen, as was they were talking about for Medicaid, Medicare. Total smokescreen on there. The Democrats were trying to push us to protect Medicaid immigrants and people who were able-bodied but were choosing to stay in the basements of their mothers' homes and receive Medicaid payments. That's what was there, and sorry if I sound a little bit belligerent about that, but it was frustrating for our when I was in front of the Rules Committee running my bill, for instance, and hear them push us on that issue when it was absolutely an untruth. And they're going to still try to do it because they know if this piece of legislation ultimately gets through in the fullest sense in the Senate, and I hope the Senate understands that, they've not worked on it anywhere near the time that we worked on it for over a year to get this done. If allowed to change it, the American public will be hurt.
So, all right. So, Social Security, you couldn't touch it by law, even to remove the taxes on it.
Even to remove the taxes, we weren't doing that. Yeah, even to remove the taxes on it. The issue is there are no changes to what's going on, I mean. The type of prevarication that was going on, is that a better word? About what we were attempting to do was just unbelievable. We're here with opportunity now to grow this country in ways we haven't before. Is the bill perfect? No. You and I have talked about that. But we can only do so much. But the savings of almost $1.7 trillion has never happened in the history of the United States to have in overall spending that's going on in this government, and to give the opportunity for businesses, for families, for educators to grow was amazing. And I think that, and I have to give the Speaker of the House such credit for being able to stand to take the challenges of various factions of us in Congress, to talk with the president, to get the president fully understand what he couldn't do,
and then to have the unbelievable support from the president in standing firm and saying, this is something I have to have because what I promised the American people, and it will make this country greater than it's been. And it was unbelievable to stand there yesterday as we had finished the vote and to be able to tell the American people, basically promises made, promises kept.
Well, there you go. Let me ask you about spending.
Okay.
Where is that going to leave us? Because one of the big concerns I heard from Ron Johnson, senator of Wisconsin, on a couple of days ago here on the program, he was a no at that point, saying the spending is still too high. He couldn't support it. Would add a couple of $1 trillion to the debt next year, the year after that. Where are we on spending actually? Do you think we can get it through the United States Senate?
Well, Ron Johnson cannot. I hope he takes a look at the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, or excuse me, the repeal of Obamacare back in 2017, when I had gone through 27 hours and 40 minutes of markup in the Energy and Commerce Committee to try to out and through the House. We needed one vote, and who but the late Senator, and put a thumbs down and ended our opportunity. And we've had to live with that ever since because of one senator trying to do that. I hope Ron Johnson understands that this, as Johnson said, was like crossing the Grand Canyon. This thing had to work to get $1.6 trillion of tax cuts and all sorts of reforms to take place. I hope he does. CBO numbers are trusted, who have been constantly wrong, as high on the Tax Cut and Jobs Act as $1 trillion off of what they said. That Ron Johnson will not be the senator that becomes another John McCain and stops the American people from receiving what they need at this time and this place in the history of the United States. And if it's just what he wants, then we're not going to succeed. Trump will not have his last 2 years of presidency in the way that he should have.
Right.
And that's the issues.
I actually think, Congressman, I actually think your bigger concerns are going to be the likes of Mitch McConnell and others that I think might vote no just to spite this president. And by extension, the American people will see what happens. Congressman Walberg, always appreciate you being here. I think it's a great step forward. It's a lot better than where we've been, and I think most Americans who voted for Donald Trump are happy with where we are. All right.
I
got to
think
run.
so.
Thank you so much.
Good to be with you. Have a great weekend.
Well, it's good to be with you. There it is. Tim Walberg, one of the yes votes on the big, beautiful bill. There it is. We'll take a break and be right back. It's the Steve Gruber Show. All right, back to it now. We continue to bring in the folks that are behind the 215-214 vote to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill. It's on its way to the United States Senate. Bill Huizenga is my next guest. He is joining me now. Excuse me. Mark Huizenga is joining me now. Mark, how are you today?
Good morning. Doing great.
I got a little turned around there having talked to Tim Walberg. I apologize. But you, along with Julie,
too many Huizengas,
are hosting a press conference on PFAS, right? PFAS, which is something that I've done extensively on this program, the dangers of what we call forever chemicals. There's something that contaminate this world. They create a lot of health problems. We're just learning more and more about it all the time. Tell me about this press conference. What are you doing?
Yeah, well, good morning, Steve. Thanks so much for the chance to talk a little bit about this issue, which I think is highly underestimated. This bill basically says that we know that PFAS exists, that people drank water that was contaminated, whether it was on a municipal source or through their own personal wells, without knowledge that was, building up in their bodies, that they are so-called forever chemicals. And what this bill does, it says that if you were born before 2012, and age 11 or younger, then you may have been exposed significantly, and that long and short of it is that you can then get a blood test to get that PFAS level tested. The state has a PFAS testing lab in Lansing, but what's different about this bill is it says that not only will you get tested, when you find out the result, you'll be tracked in a research study by a R1 institution, that's like a Michigan State, Michigan, Wayne State, and will help you to identify what happens in the future as the science catches up to this problem. Now, a lot of times people think, well, this is forever chemicals, there's nothing you can do. But I just had a conversation a couple weeks ago with a researcher who said that there is a drug that's out there that is currently showing some potential for mitigation of PFAS in the blood. So this is just the beginning. We have to think about this longitudinally, but in the long run, we have to do what we can for our kids that have been contaminated by these horrible products.
Well, one of my disappointments, Mark, in this administration currently is that they did lower the standards for PFAS and PFOAs and these forever chemicals. That's something that I'm not happy with the Trump administration. People say, well, you love everything he does. No, I don't. I don't like that. We had a whistleblower on this program, I believe it was October of 2017 or 18. I have to go back and look, who told us about the contamination at military bases in Michigan because of the triple F firefighting foam, right? Aqueous firefighting foam, which, look, it's a tremendous product. If you have an aircraft carrier that's on fire, this is the product you want. But the problem is this chemical is also in pizza boxes, in microwave popcorn, and water resistant for your couch and so forth and your carpet. This chemical is everywhere. They knew it was dangerous. It is dangerous. It causes all sorts of issues and problems. So it's time to step up and be honest about it. There's also a mitigation that I've understood, and these are all emerging technologies, Senator, because there's a technology now that magnetism can help eliminate PFAS in the environment, I'm told. And if you're talking about drugs that can help mitigate PFAS in the body, these are steps forward. But we need to clean up our act. No pun intended, right?
Yep. No, I agree. And these products are well intended. They've been around since the 40s. It's a category, so it's really something like almost 20,000 chemicals. So this is not something that you can say, well, let's just get rid of it. It's even in your McDonald's wrapper. And I think we can and should do more to mitigate this. I think the state of Michigan, our policy that says, here's the standard that we have, that will still stick. We have states' rights that will allow that to be out there. And probably most importantly, that we have an awareness of it and that we are testing for it. So I think Michigan actually leads the country for this. But we also can do more with our kids that have been contaminated. So finding a way to track them over time. This is a pilot study just for Kent, Ottawa, and Kalamazoo counties. And why did we do it just for those three counties? Is that we think the exposure is probably broader across the state, and as we tend to find more facilities that are going to be contaminated, that we're prepared for it. But we should also then use this study as a pilot to determine what the extent of how much it's going to cost to do this for the rest of the state. And ultimately, I think the state of Michigan should lead the country for taking care of our kids.
I mean, and here's the thing. The federal government has now said, for example, that their responsibility ends at the fence line on a military base. The thing about PFAS, as you probably know, I'm quite sure, is that it blooms, if you will. That's what they call it. It blooms, and it goes through traditional barriers. Toxins would normally be blocked by earth, for example. If there was a toxin in a pond, but it was surrounded by, the ground, the toxin wouldn't spread. This toxin spreads. This toxin is different than anything else. Anyhow, give me the last word here. What do you hope for Michigan and the United States going forward? We got about a minute.
Look, this is a bipartisan bill. It's a House Bill 4499, 4500, both Posthumous and Rogers in the House, taking this to House Policy Committee. I don't have a Democrat sponsor in the Senate, just I'm a 50-50 seat, so, it's politics. But it's going to be going to the Housing and Human Services Committee. At the end of the day, standing up for our kids, making sure they have clean water to drink, and if they have been affected adversely by this, that we should help them. Just as importantly, if you think that you may have been affected and you get a 0 result, imagine the comfort that the mother feels thinking that they may have been contaminated to get a no result. That's also a very important aspect of this bill.
Yeah. Pretty important. You look at what happened in Wolverine there in West Michigan and elsewhere. It's in the ground chroming operations in southeast Michigan during the height of chrome when it was the big thing for auto manufacturers. We need to continue to stay on this. I appreciate the work you're doing, Senator, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Greatly appreciate it. Senator Mark Huizenga. Got a little turned around at the top of the interview, so it is. We'll take a break. When we come back, Brock Paulbush will have sports right here on the Steve Gruber Show. All right, time to check in on sports now with Brock Paulbush.
With a look at sports, I'm Brock Palmbush. The NBA's most valuable player, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, scored 38 points, and he led the Oklahoma City Thunder to a 118-103 victory over the Minnesota Timberwolves to take Game 2 of the NBA's Western Conference Finals last night in Oklahoma City. Thunder lead the series 2-0. Game 3 tomorrow night in Minnesota. Sam Bennett scored a pair of goals, and goalie Sergei Bobrovsky stopped all 17 shots, and the Florida Panthers shut out the Carolina Hurricanes 5-0 in Raleigh to take Game 2 of the NHL's Eastern Conference Finals last night. Panthers lead the series 2-0. Game 3 tomorrow night in Florida. In Major League Baseball yesterday, there were 8 games. Winners included Toronto, Cleveland, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee. And the College Football Playoff Committee voted yesterday that they will go to a straight seeding model for the upcoming season. They'll be seeded 1 through 12, regardless of conference affiliation, and Notre Dame now eligible to get a first-round bye. That's a look at sports. Back to you, Steve.
There you have it, Brock. Notre Dame. Well, who knows? Let's see here. Coming up in the next hour, we've got a lot more to talk about here today. The One Big Beautiful Bill is going to be on tap for us to discuss in detail. We're getting a better idea that the Social Security could not be touched, right? So that's a big change. $4,000 tax credit, though, for those over 65, so you got that going for you. That'll be happening. Breaking news right now, apparently the Russians and the Ukrainians are swapping prisoners. Quite a big deal as President Trump congratulates Russia and Ukraine on swapping prisoners. Big change in attitude there. Look, we're getting closer. We're getting closer to peace in Ukraine, and that is incredibly important. Led by Donald Trump. Led by Donald Trump, who's pushing for peace all over the planet. We'll talk about this and so much more. Plus, if you'd like to get in on the phone calls, 877-310-9966 on a Free-for-All Friday. I'll be right back. What am I hearing? What am I hearing? Why am I hearing rock music? All right, kicking off another brand new hour here of the Steve Gruber Show. Glad to have you here as we get into this next hour of the program. Appreciate you taking the time and spending it here with the Free for All Friday. Live from the nation's capital today. Yeah, live from D.C. I was in the room with Caroline Levitt yesterday, part of the Washington Press Pool now. And glad to be part of it. Soon I'll be appearing here more often. And I appreciate John Solomon opening his studios to us in Real America's Voice as well. Three big things you need to know this hour. Number one, a Florida woman accused of attacking an elderly man down there. Why? Wearing a MAGA hat. Yeah, attacked him. She's being charged as she should be. Number two, the COVID-19 booster era officially on life support, according to my friends over at Michigan News Source. We'll be looking into that. And number three, we're going to start with the Supreme Court upholding Donald Trump's ability to remove people from positions inside the executive branch. Pretty remarkable, right? The Supreme Court upholding Donald Trump's removal of two Democratic appointees, both appointed by Joe Biden during the previous administration, right? The Thursday ruling came after Chief Justice John Roberts agreed to halt the reinstatement of National Labor Relations Board member Gwen Wilcox and the Merit Systems Protection Board member Kathy Harris. I don't even know what the Merit Systems Protection Board is. Do you? I mean, there are so many little nooks and crannies and crevices and hallways and back alleys in the United States government that people are off in side places getting paid for God only knows what. But you're footing the bill. Congratulations. We're very proud of you for paying that freight. The High Court suggested that it could block attempts to fire Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, however. Donald Trump obviously very unimpressed with Jerome Powell because he continues to hold interest rates where they are when we all know that inflation at 2.3% should mean a decrease in the interest rates, which would help out credit card holders, those trying to buy a new house, those trying to get a used car. reducing the prime rate would be helpful to all of those folks. He has not done it. The issue confronting the justices was whether the board members of these two other agencies, both appointed by Joe Biden, whether they can stay in their jobs while the larger fight continues over what to do with a 90-year-old Supreme Court decision known as Humphrey's Executor. Humphrey's Executor, in which the court ruled unanimously that presidents cannot fire independent board members without cause. The court's 3 liberal judges dissented, of course. Not since the 1950s or even before has a president without a legitimate reason tried to remove an officer from a classic independent agency, so wrote Elena Kagan. She was joined by Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, of course. They're always together. Rarely do they ever split. I shouldn't say always. They split here recently, but it's pretty rare. Kagan wrote that her colleagues were telegraphing what would happen next. The impatience to get on with things, to now hand the president the most unitary, meaning also the most subservient administration since Herbert Hoover, maybe ever, must reveal how that eventual decision will go. Lawyers for the Trump administration urging the Supreme Court to keep Wilcox and Harris off the job while the case moves through the courts. This is another big win. See, and I was talking about this with a number of people here in D.C. over the last couple of days. It seems, one day you have a groaner where the Supreme Court does something, you're like, really? And the next thing you're like, nice job. The next thing you're like, really? And then it's back and forth. Win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. For this administration specifically, not the other Supreme Court decisions. Like the tie, there was a 4-4 tie on upholding a ban on giving federal tax dollars to religious schools in Oklahoma. That came down yesterday. Some say it's a good idea, some say it's bad. Amy Coney Barrett recused herself from that case. 4-4 was the tie, so it stays with the lower court that said you can't do that. It's unconstitutional to give tax dollars to religious schools. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other on that decision. I'm going to stick with where we are. Wilcox and Harris would entrust the president's power for the months or years so it could take the courts to resolve the litigation, is what they argued, because they said, look, if you put these people back in and the president prevails ultimately in this case, it will have negatively impacted his ability to run the executive branch in the interim period. So they're keeping them out of the job. They lost their lawsuits. They did. The president would lose control. Here's what they wrote. The president would lose control of critical parts of the executive branch for a significant portion of his term, and he would likely have to spend further months voiding actions taken by improperly reinstated agency leaders. So there you go. From Michigan News Source, I have this story, and I think it's a good one. In a significant shift of policy, the Food and Drug Administration has announced it will no longer recommend COVID-19 boosters for healthy individuals under the age of 65, citing a lack of evidence to support that. If you were not here earlier, Dr. Peter McCullough was on the program with me earlier. You should go back and listen to it on podcast. It was impactful, to say the least. He testified yesterday to Dr. McCullough in front of the U.S. Senate Homeland Security Committee. And he testified as an expert witness, the lead witness in the hearing to discuss myocarditis. Of course, Peter McCullough is a cardiologist, and he said there are thousands of patients that were injured from vaccines, both from Pfizer and Moderna, according to his testimony yesterday in front of that Senate committee, led by Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who he praised for continuing to dig into this. Peter McCullough cited 1,065 peer-reviewed papers describing the connection between the vaccinations, the so-called vaccinations for COVID, and vax injuries, including death. And he says it was first reported in early August 2021, the first paper came out. Then the New England Journal of Medicine was describing a 42-year-old man who came in with vaccine myocarditis. It was not caused by anything else. It was caused by the vaccine. He died 3 days later. He could not be saved in one of the premier hospitals in America, testified McCullough. The question is, how widely known was it? What were people being told? What were doctors being told? What was your doctor being told? When your doctor was telling you, you should get the prescription, and I talked to him about this. Doctors have computers on their desk at work, right? They have a computer just, not unlike this. And every day information comes in about emerging diseases and infections and and the situation health-wise across the country and around the world and things that could be happening, and notifications, if you will, happens every day. Doctors have new notifications in their email just like you would for your business every single day, right? Well, they were being told that the vaccines were perfectly safe. Make sure everybody gets them, because that was the information being stuffed into their computers and information they have trusted for their entire career, so they pass it along to people like you and I. The problem is it wasn't true. The problem is it was garbage. And Peter McCullough tore that curtain back with emphasis yesterday. He's been doing it for a long time. He never got the vaccine. He said it was never safe. Apparently they still think it's safe for people over 65. Look, I'm not getting the vaccine. I was talked into it by a couple of doctors back in 2021. Late in the year, it did nothing for me. I got COVID anyway. Breakthrough infection, yeah. They were all breakthrough infections because there was no value to it. It didn't prevent any infections at all. At all. Stopped zero, from what I can tell. That's my take on it. Anyhow, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, Steve Doolin will be here. Best-looking lawyer in America today. Yeah, the smartest, hardest-working, best-looking lawyer in America today, Steve Doolin, after the break. All right, back at it now as we plow through all these different decisions coming down from the Supreme Court. I want to get somebody to weigh in on this that could give me some gravitas. Not to mention perfectly coiffed hair and a stunning appearance. It's Steve Doolin, everybody. Here he is, best-looking, smartest, most capable attorney in the history of the world. Doolin?
Hey, Gruber. I'll try to live up to that.
Well, why not? So I feel like the Supreme Court is a bit schizophrenic at the moment. And I say that, Doolin, because one day here's a ruling that I'm like, well, that's terrible. The next day I'm like, well, that's perfect. And then it's terrible. It's like watching a tennis match, back and forth. Here's a good one. Here's a bad one. Here's a good one. Here's a bad. Are you feeling the same way? Because I see things that make complete sense, and I see things that make no sense at all. And I'm just a layman. I'm not an expert on the law like you, sir. So shed some light.
Well, I have to admit, I'm feeling a little bit that way too. I don't know that I'd use that strong a term, schizophrenic, but I was disappointed when recently my case was not taken up on my petition for cert. A case we've been working on for 10 years. It looked like a perfect case to help clarify Heller and Bruin in the Second Amendment in front of the Supreme Court. And, they don't give you an explanation. You just don't get taken up. And that's happened to a couple other cases recently that I thought were looking perfect for this same kind of clarification. Antonyuk in New York and a couple others. And then, as you say, some of them come down and they're perfect. So it's a lot like trying to figure out what a legislature is going to do. You might think you have the votes counted, but it doesn't come out quite the way you expected. It's hard to handicap this stuff. My crystal ball is broken at the moment.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. All right, fair enough. But it does seem to go back and forth. One day I think that Amy Coney Barrett's the worst thing that's happened to the Supreme Court since Sandra Day O'Connor, and then she come and is part of an order or a decision that I'm like, okay, she's back on the right side of this thing. Anyhow, a firearm silencer is part of the big beautiful bill. Cleared the House on Thursday, as you know. Buried deep in this, a provision that would scrap a $200 federal excise tax on. I shouldn't call it, they call them silencers. This is the New York Post. It should be called a suppressor, which, by the way, are the law in a lot of European countries, so they keep the sound down. This is kind of a nice win buried in there for the Second Amendment crowd, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it actually is, though some folks are unhappy, of course. There's always somebody who's unhappy. And, I'll say this with regard to suppressor versus silencer. I'm an old infantry sergeant, and the tactical guys call them suppressors, but we lawyers are stuck calling them silencers because that is the word that is used in the statutes. In fact, our Michigan statute says silencer or muffler, kind of highlighting the fact that it's the same technology that's on your car. And so that is the term when you're talking about the law. It's a silencer, and that kind of highlights the history of this thing. The National Firearms Act of 1934 was built on propaganda built up by J. Edgar Hoover and the folks running Hollywood at the time. The idea was that there are these super dangerous devices that can allow nefarious criminals to get away with crimes undetected. And, the reason we actually call them suppressors is because they kind of reduce the sound signature of a firearm, but they don't eliminate the sound signature of a firearm. It's still a good idea to wear earplugs or muffs or both, even if you're using a silencer. And you nailed it. In a lot of European countries, they're actually required. It's considered ungentlemanly and rude to discharge a firearm without a silencer or a muffler or a suppressor. All the same thing, we just use different terms. These things were designed as a safety device by the son of Hiram Maxim, the guy who invented the machine gun. And he and his son worked on creating silencers for machine guns after so many troops came back from World War I with hearing loss. Those that survived the trench warfare, for the most part, were at least partially deaf when they got home because of the machine gun.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm still partially deaf from being around.
I know I am. You should see the NRA board meetings. Everybody says, "What? Huh? Can you repeat that?"
Yeah, I'll share this story. My father had a 25-06 hunting rifle that he bought at one point. It had a ported barrel, which is the opposite of a suppressor, basically.
A loudener.
I touched that thing off one time. It was like dropping an anvil on my head.
Well, and actually, yeah, this is kind of a big deal for hearing safety for hunters, because most of us, when we're hunting, don't wear hearing protection because we're trying to listen to the sounds and hear the game and whatever else is going on around us. And even it depends on the gun, right? Some are louder than others, but even one or two shots can create some permanent, lasting damage, and that stuff is cumulative through your life. So even if you don't go to the range every Saturday, if you, through a lifetime of hunting, you will do some damage to your hearing. It's truly a safety device, and the fact that that devious sociopath J. Edgar Hoover and the folks who were his puppets in Congress at the time based this legislation on Hollywood propaganda, which is exactly what it was. They had a tight relationship between the FBI and the film industry, which, just like now, was controlled by a few moguls. So all they had to do was have the right relationship with 4 or 5 folks out in Hollywood, and they could get the public to believe all kinds of crazy things, that machine guns never miss, and they never run out of ammunition, and silencers.
That's right. As long as you got checks in your checkbook, you can't run out of money. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So the law was, oh, we're done. Okay.
Thanks for the logic and the wisdom, my friend.
Yeah.
You're never done. You're just on pause.
I'll be on pause for a week.
All right. Thanks, Dylan.
Thanks, Gruber.
We'll take a break. I've got, what do I got? Don in Oklahoma? Is that who I've got next? On the Common Sense Hotline.
Confessions of a Potentially Perfect Parent, brought to you by...
All right. Free for All Friday, 877 310 9966. Don is on the line in the great state of Oklahoma today. Don checking in. Don, what's on your mind?
Well, Steve, we had a great conversation a few weeks back about the molten salt reactor technology. And I understand the president signed into law something with nuclear. And my question is, have you heard if that might be included, and your hopes and desires? Thank you.
Are you talking about nuclear power? Is that what you said? I had a little trouble hearing you.
Yeah, he signed into, I guess, something releasing some better technology on the nuclear reactors.
All right, I will, let's see here. I'm going to just look it up real quick, see what we can find out. How about upgrade? Yeah, I appreciate the call, Donna, and I'm going to dig into it, and we're going to find out. Let's see here. Trump to sign order to boost nuclear power as soon as Friday. That's today. There you have it. There's your answer. And I knew there were some executive orders being signed today. No media going in today. If media was going in, I'd likely be in there with him, but not today. U.S. President Donald Trump will sign executive orders as soon as Friday. This is from Reuters. that aim to jumpstart the nuclear energy industry by easing the regulatory process on approvals for new reactors and strengthening fuel supply chains. You know, I think the day of the big reactors is overdone. The idea of having these giant nuclear reactors, I think we're going to go to modular nuclear. So you have nuclear reactors that are like the size of an SUV. So you can power a whole city with something the size of a Suburban, for example. Wouldn't that be wonderful? You know, the whole 3 Mile Island nonsense or Chernobyl nonsense you'd never have to deal with again. So facing the first rise in power demand in 2 decades from the boom of artificial intelligence, Donald Trump declared an energy emergency in his first day in office, and now they're pursuing more open pursuit of nuclear energy. They're needed for Manhattan Project 2, he said. Manhattan Project 2, he said. All right, we'll take a break and be back. It's a free-for-all Friday on the Steve Gruber Show. All right, back to it now as we jump into it. My next guest, Ryan Duffy from Enbridge. Enbridge has been dedicated to replacing Line 5 that brings energy across the state of Michigan provides propane to people in the UP, provides oil and gas to other places, and they've been on track for a number of years now to build this tunnel under the Straits of Mackinac to create a long-term solution for people that are concerned that Line 5 could, be compromised at some point and contaminate the Great Lakes. It's never happened, but they were concerned about it, so Enbridge said, you know what, we can fix it, put people's minds at ease, and Ryan Duffy's with me again this morning. Ryan, good to have you here.
Good morning, Steve. Good to see you.
Nice to see you, my friend. So, what's the latest? You're hitting a milestone here, I understand. What can you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, for 5 years now, we've been waiting on this decision from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on the tunnel project, and now the Corps put out a new updated timeline for making a decision. So that's encouraging. The Corps is planning to put out a draft EIS, it's called, an environmental impact statement, next week. And then it will likely be making a final decision in the fall. So that environmental impact statement, it's really an analysis of how the project could affect the environment. It's really a decision-making tool the Corps uses, and we use it. So it needs to be there in place before we can really go forward. And the fact it's now coming out next week, that's a significant milestone for the tunnel. It's a critical step forward for us being able to continue to plan the project. And the process, just to get to this point, as you know, has been rigorous, a multi-year review process led by the Army Corps. We, of course, appreciate all the work that's gone into getting this document to where it needs to be, and we appreciate the opportunity we've had to contribute our responses to all the information requests we received, so we've had input into it. It's been more than 5 years in the making to get here. We applied back in April 2020. And all along, our goal has been to have the smallest possible impact we can possibly have to the environment and the smallest footprint we can have. And all our work has really gone into that with that in mind. And our tunnel design already does reflect that. But now we can use some of these findings from this draft EIS to really further fine tune the project.
So let me ask you this, Ryan, because it's there's been this public debate, ban Line 5 and these things. I see those, yard signs. You see them when you're driving around different parts of the state. Close Line 5, which is silly, frankly. It would cut off energy to Michigan at a time when we know AI and everything else. We need more energy for everything all the time, as we've talked about here. So what about public participation? How do you put people at ease about the tunnel project, ones that seem to be opposed to no matter what happens? Can you help some of these folks sleep better at night, I suppose?
Yeah, for sure. We really do want to have public opinion, public input into the project. And we do see some of those signs. We also see the build the tunnel signs, of course. We know we do have a lot of support for the project in the polling we do. We see 70% support. And we want all of that input to go into this permitting process. And once the draft EIS comes out here, that does kick off a 30-day public comment period. So we really support that. We welcome comments. Having that input's really an essential part of this process. We look forward to hearing that feedback. We can answer questions, continue to engage with everybody that's involved with this process and everybody interested in the tunnel. And that public comment can really help to shape the EIS and possibly add information there that the Corps didn't already have. And so we can learn from that, use that information provided by the public to refine some of our planning even more and avoid any environmental or cultural impacts. We've done more than 40,000 hours of survey work there in the Straits already, so we have a really good idea on what's out there. But we can always make some additional refinements and fine tunings.
Yeah. Let me ask you about this. As we're talking about input and so forth, another place is for people to go to the St. Ignace Information Center. A grand reopening, I understand, is about to happen there. It's a place where people can learn about everything that's being done, right?
They can. We're really proud of that. It's our information center. It's right there in downtown St. Ignace. So everybody's welcome. Stop in if you're passing through, vacationing up in the area there. We've redesigned it. We've added a lot of new elements. It's a place where people can learn about all the research we've already done on the project and how we plan to build the tunnel. And really, I can tell you the highlight right now is that we've added a 20-foot long model of the tunnel boring machine, which is the machine we're going to use to actually dig the tunnel there under the lake bed. So it's a 2-scale model. It's got moving parts. It shows just how complex that machinery is going to be, because when it's built, it's actually going to be 600 feet long. And it has the cutter heads on the front end as it goes through drilling the rock, and that rock's turned into slurry, which goes down out the back end. And then as it goes, it's putting up the 18-inch thick sections of concrete that make up the tunnel wall. So it's an incredible piece of machinery, and you really have to see that model of what it's going to look like to really fully
and it does all those things simultaneously.
Yeah, all in one machine, a 600-foot long boring machine.
Wow.
Moving its way underground through there. So it's really incredible. And it's fascinating to see it. You know, it looks exactly like it's going to look when the real one's going to be built.
Cool. So I hear you might be taking name suggestions. I think I'm going to call it the Big Worm until I hear something better. Is it just kind of chews its way through the soil, kind of like the way a night crawler would, right? Kind of like a worm.
Well, yeah, you can pitch that one at the information center for sure. So yeah, everybody's welcome to also, while they're there, enter our contest to name the machine. That's right. So you can enter while you're at the information center, or go online and do it. I can tell you, traditionally, those boring machines are named after women from history, because that goes back to Saint Barbara, who was the patron saint of architects, builders, and miners. So we're following that tradition. Our contest to name the boring machine. Ideally, it would name a woman from history who made contributions there in that area up in the Straits. So, we're looking for that. We welcome everybody's entries. If your listeners want to submit, that'd be great. And so, yeah, a lot to do at the information center. We welcome everybody to stop in.
Good stuff. Interesting bit of history there, that it's tied to history. All right, so a woman who's had a great contribution to that part of the state of Michigan might get her name memorialized on what I'm still going to call the Big Worm until further notice. Ryan Duffy, really appreciate you being here.
All right, great. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you so much. And when they update the name, I will update you here, and we'll tell you what it's called. Again, you could submit online. You can go to the St. Ignace Information Center, suggest your name for this big boring machine. It does all those things. It bores, throws the slurry out the back, puts a concrete, encasement. It's a remarkable machine. It's remarkable. Technology at its best. Coming up after this, Ivy will be at her best here on the program. It's Free for All Friday. Ivy will join me in a moment. All right, it is Friday, and I'm in Washington, D.C., which is one of the places I like. I do like the city of Washington for its historical value and all the things here. It's been a little wet yesterday, but the weather reports for Memorial Day weekend seem pretty decent. I'm going to have to check in and see how Michigan is right now with Ivy. Who's there? Ivy, good morning.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Lovely. It's lovely here. You know, I like being in Washington for all the, I like being at the White House for all the action, of course, but I like the history of Washington, and I'm a history buff.
Yes, it's a great place to be if you like museums and
sure.
The great Natural History Museum there and great art museums and great historical museums. I haven't made it over to, what is the one that holds all the National Archives?
Yeah.
I have not been there, but I would love to actually go and see, like, the original Constitution and things like that. I think that'd be incredible. So, it's good to
actually,
be in
on
BC.
Memorial Day, it's one of the few days you can get into the Greater Archive, I'm told. I was told that yesterday.
That's cool.
So you can get greater access on, I'll be working, so I won't be there, but normally other folks can.
Well, great. Yeah, well, I think you're going to have an exciting time, action-packed. It's like drinking from a fire hose when dealing with this president. So
Sure
always something interesting to talk about. But, I always love, Free for All Fridays. We like to hear the dumbest thing you've heard all week. And my Nancy Pelosi a bite of this week is that one. Anthony, do you have that ready to roll?
To me, it's because my whole mission in politics is about the children, for the children. And I went from housewife to House Speaker, or from the kitchen to the Congress, for the children, because 1 in 5 children in America was living in poverty and going to sleep hungry at night. Now this bill comes along and makes matters worse.
And this bill comes along and makes matters worse. How long has Nancy Pelosi been in Congress?
Roughly 1,000 years.
Right. So that roughly 1,000 years, you would think that if she was so concerned about going from being a housewife to being a congresswoman, that 1,000 years that she's already spent in Congress, maybe there might have been some attempt to improve the lives of these children.
Yeah, you would think. Here's the thing. In poverty in America, Lyndon Johnson put forth the Great Society in 1965. The poverty rate in America was between 12 and 15%. Back then, it was a lot of elderly people. Now it's a lot of kids. The poverty level is still about the same, 12 to 15%. It's just shifted from old people to young people. So we haven't accomplished anything with all of this spending.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We should allow the churches and the charitable organizations to do more.
But
go ahead.
It's not only about the poverty in America, but think about the health of our children these days. And this whole MAHA movement, they did this MAHA event yesterday. I don't know if you caught any of that, but the things that came out of that press conference, if you will, incredible. I mean, our kids are sicker than they've ever been. They're more overweight than they've ever been. And once again, of course, the folks on the left are, oh, this is terrible. RFK is trying to kill our children. Okay, let's rewind. You've done nothing. Your policies and things that you have done have created the society that we're in today that is creating this obese problem with children, with the crap in our foods. And it's just not, we're just not a healthy country. And
we're the sickest.
Right. And actually, I have this. If you didn't get any of this, RFK was on yesterday. Let's play that really quickly, Anthony.
So this is the first time in history that all of government has come out with a consensus document that all the cabinet officials agree on. Right. And that says we are in a existential crisis now in our country. It's important. The government has never admitted that before. And today we're all admitting it, and we're saying now we're going to do something about it. We have 60 days. This was the diagnostic. Yeah. In 60 days, we are gonna deliver the prescription of the initiatives that we need to do, but we're already doing it.
And that's a pretty quick deadline.
We're already getting rid of chemicals in our food, of food dyes.
Right.
Which people have been trying to do for years. We did it in the first 100 days.
Yeah. So he's, you know, it's an existential threat. The issues that we have in America regarding our food and our health is a threat to the American way of life. And it's a great breath of fresh air to hear this, because I've been a pretty big health nut my entire life. But
true.
Because actually, at one period of time in my life, I was very sick. My early 20s, I had hypoglycemia, really terrible. I felt terrible all the time. I actually would have these micro sleep moments where I would literally be driving and then falling asleep because I was that unhealthy. And then I realized that I needed to take responsibility for my own health, and here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to eat whole foods and eat as well as I possibly can, and that really transformed my life and my health. And I had to do that to fix a problem, right? But a lot of this stuff goes unseen, or it's like for people that are aging, they think, oh, this is just the natural aging process. I should feel tired all the time, and I should, you know, my body should feel achy, and I just can't possibly get through a whole day of life because that's normal because I'm older. But that's actually not true. You should have a tremendous amount of energy in your everyday life. And a lot of the time it's, you know, environmental and what you're eating and how you're sleeping, and all of these things play into how your life is on a daily basis. And so
it's exactly what people like Dr. Peter McCullough say, and Bobby Kennedy says, which is take care of yourself. Good nutrition, good sleep, good exercise,
and also doesn't help though when we have a tremendous amount of crap in our food too, and so we have to.
You can't have it. Got to get that stuff out of there.
Right. All right. Thank you, Steve.
Well, Ivy, eat well today.
I'll do my best.
Take care of yourself.
All right. Thank you.
Have a great Friday. I'll be back with some final thoughts. Ivy, love you, and I'll be right back.
Are you ready to...
Memorial Day weekend. Remember why we have a 3-day weekend. Make sure you take a moment and think about those that laid down their life so you could have this time with your family or with yourself or wherever you may go in this great country of ours. I might go visit Mount Vernon. I've never been there. I might have the opportunity. I'm going to West Point. I'll be there with the president tomorrow as he addresses the graduates of West Point for this current class of 2025. I'll be there tomorrow with President Donald Trump and the crew. You can watch that on Real America's Voice, of course, as we'll be there. Monday, I'll be at Arlington National Cemetery with the president. I can think of no better or more poignant place to be on Memorial Day and to look around at the thousands of white marble headstones with the names inscribed of men and women who gave the last full measure of devotion to this country so you and I could be here. Remarkable. And it's always chilling to me to look at the headstones and you see California, New York, Oregon, Michigan, Montana, the place they came from, the Virgin Islands, Guam. No matter where they were in this great American experiment of ours, they came forth, volunteered in difficult times oftentimes, the day after Pearl Harbor, the day after 9/11. So many different times that they stepped up and said, hey, I believe in this country. I'll die to protect it, to protect my family and my future. So as you enjoy your holiday weekend, and you should, please do, but take a moment and reflect on those that made it possible. Reflect on a moment that made it possible for you to be here and celebrate this day and this weekend. God bless America. Like I say every day, fight the good fight. God bless America. I'm Steve Gruber. This is The Steve Gruber Show. And remember, only you can save America. Have a great weekend.